Reviewing games can be a tricky business, particularly when more and more games have some sort of online component that can't really be fairly judged until after the game's release. No amount of stress testing and beta programs can properly guarantee the smooth launch of a game. With gaming journalists worldwide currently hunkered down under a storm of controversy, we should take this opportunity to reflect on one of the events from the past few months and ask how we can avoid this sort of situation in the future.
The event in question was centered around the release of EA's new version of SimCity. They had promoted it as a love letter to a loyal fan base, the return of one of the most revered and popular PC franchises of all time. Most of all, they promised they would use modern technology to build on the older games, to add greater depth and replayability. The most talked about new feature was the ability to interact with other player cities via the always online connectivity. Lauded in press releases as a defining feature of the game, EA portrayed the game as a combination of the traditional SimCity gameplay with modern interactivity reminiscent of massively multiplayer titles. Sounds great, right? Not so much. Players were vocal about their numerous issues with this always online approach, both before and after the release of the game. Whilst the new online features were warmly welcomed, the requirement of a mandatory, constant connection to the internet was not. Many players were confused by the route EA was taking, given that SimCity had always been a single-player focused game, and worried that the connectivity would limit those who could play the game. Anyone who wanted to play the game on the plane, at university, even sitting in a cafe, without a reliable, constant connection, the game would not function. Many people believed that the online system was a farce, and simply a way to push an intrusive DRM system that otherwise would not have been tolerated. There were also accurate fears of server instability on EA's part, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Despite these fears, the lead up to SimCity's launch was an exciting time for both players and journalists, with magazines and websites fighting for exclusives and early access to the game for review. One of the first reviews was uploaded by Polygon, who had pushed the game for months with pre-launch coverage on their website. Their early review praised the game for its inventive network capabilities and faithful handling of the classic franchise, awarding the game a 9.5 out of 10. Unfortunately, this judgment was premature, as the game was released and EA's servers promptly buckled under the weight. After player outcries about long wait times, lost save files, and simply not being able to play the game they'd purchased, Polygon was forced to change their score to an 8 out of 10. A couple of days later, the score slipped further to a 4 out of 10, citing EA's inability to fix the issues within a reasonable period of time since the game's launch. Several days and updates later, the score was again revised to 6.5 out of 10, which seems to be the final score for the game, according to Polygon. With these dates in our mind, we need to ask ourselves, what's the purpose of this review? If it's to help people decide whether they should buy SimCity at release, then it's obviously a huge hit to Polygon's credibility to have to change the final score so many times within a single month. How can they explain this to consumers who bought the game near release based on Polygon's initial score of 9.5? On the other hand, if the purpose of the review was to give an opinion that could be considered down the track, there was no reason to rush the review by playing on pre-release servers. Both scenarios are problematic for the consumer and hurt the website's reputation. To their credit, Polygon did mention in their initial review that they were playing on special servers, but at the time didn't factor this into their final score. This is the risk that journalists run these days when they attempt to review an online title before its release. It's not just SimCity. Think of the massively multiplayer titles, or the shooters with matchmaking systems. With more and more titles leaning heavily on online features, it's about time for us to try and work out a way to solve this problem in general. Part of this adjustment will have to come on the part of the players who read these reviews. We can't expect a review to be both before the launch date of the game, as well as being fair and balanced. In the future, I expect to see more and more reviews that are ongoing, with an opinion being given at launch, but holding off on a final score until a week or two after release.
Days like these, I'm glad I get to pick and choose what I talk about, rather than have to talk about what my editor wants. Now, just so everyone knows, this video is not a review of SimCity. I don't even own the game, and to be honest, I don't plan on getting it unless it's fixed. If I can't play it, then what's the point? Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter. See you for the next episode.